Here's our set of figure carving tools. Some of them are probably more appropriately thought of as chasing tools, but chasing tools can often be used in other purposes besides just chasing. And these will all be useful in various forms of figure carving and decorative ironwork, even if they don't get used for the dragon head itself. I've ended up with a matching set of 21 tools that are all made out of S7. They're all about the same length, the same weight. They'll all perform very similarly under the hammer, and that's what I was going for. But I still have another dozen or so tools that I've made in the past that are similar styles and slightly different sizes, and some of these may be what we use. And of course, these are for the wrought iron collaboration with Christ-Centered Ironworks. Roy sent me the wrought iron, and we forged that out into some stock that we'll be able to make a dragon's head out of. But I thought I'd just look at the tooling today, and we'll make a simple test dragon as well as some other sample forgings just to see how some of these perform. We may not get to all of them because these are a lot of tools that may not actually see use in the Dragon project. Probably 4 or 5 tools will be enough. An eyeball punch, a ball punch, handset, center punch, at the very least are the tools that we'll need, but all these others may come in handy and they may be useful. And I was just trying to think ahead so I might not have to stop and make tools in the middle of it. Plus, these tools will last me the rest of my life, and we'll be able to get good use out of them in future videos, and I think they'll all get used. If you start thinking about tools like this and how they work, you could probably make a set of 100 tools and not duplicate the same tool in the same size twice. But a ball-end punch you might want in 4 or 5 different sizes. A handset you might want in 4 or 5 different sizes. Same thing with various chisels. So there's a lot of variation here, and you can either make them in a set like this, which is a convenient way to do it, but it's fairly expensive, fairly time-consuming, or you can make them one at a time. In the long run, that'll take longer because it takes longer to just make one thing at a time than it does to do them in small batches. But whatever works for you, don't get hung up on needing to make a full set of tools. If you just need an eyeball punch, just make the eyeball punch. So let's go over to the forge. I'm going to take a piece of 3/4 by 1 inch mild steel. I'm going to reduce the end, or reduce behind the end, leave the 3/4 by 1 for about 1.5 inches or 2 inches, and reduce this down to 3/4 right behind it so that it might be a good handle for a fireplace poker or something like that in the future. And then we'll forge the dragon on the end of it. I won't show this part, I'll just go ahead and get that done, and then we'll start taking a look at these tools. I'll try to show you what each tool or each style of tool does and explain a little bit about where you might use it in a figure carving project. I'm sure they will not all get used on our little test dragon today. I've reduced the bar right behind the dragon's head, and this will make a good handle for a poker or a door handle or a door knocker if I wanted to turn this into a door knocker, and left a little bit more mass to actually make the dragon out of. The first thing I want to do is sort of define certain areas through forging and get this close, and then we'll start looking at the tools. Fuller in right here behind where the nose or the snout will be, and that will leave a kind of a prominent little snout there. So you start seeing an area here that will be his nose. His mouth will cut in here. And I'm going to work this back to end up with a place to put eyes. I think for that I'm just going to go to the edge of the anvil, kind of slope his nose in here. I'm knocking the corners down fairly heavily because I don't think dragons need sharp cornered faces. that's about all I need to do here at the anvil for now. Let's go over to the vise and we'll start refining with the eyes. We'll create eye sockets and try to spread this material out to increase the profile a little bit. Something that helps quite a bit in doing things like this is just have an angle block in the vise. This is just a big piece of angle iron. Welded up, has a little tab that holds onto the vise jaw so it doesn't get kicked out. Very useful thing for doing all sorts of figure carving. First tool we'll look at is just a handset. And it's like a set hammer, and it just replaces your swung hammer for more accuracy. You set this where you want to make the impression, and then you hit it with a hammer like you would a chisel. So this is a regular set hammer, and this is just a handheld version that provides a little bit more precision when working by oneself at the vise. Now this does not always have to be this shape. You can make sets in whatever shape you think you need. I have a round one here. I have two sizes of oval ones that may come in handy, and I have a smaller square one. So you can make these in whatever size and configuration you want. They all serve the same purpose. It just depends on the space and the effect you're trying to achieve. Now I will apologize if I am in your way for a lot of this process, but it's hard to fit a camera, a vise, and a blacksmith all in the same space. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to refine this with the set tool up to where I want his eyes. I'm going to leave a little step down right there. It starts to define the eye socket. Stuff cools down pretty quickly, so lots of little heats. We're just going to keep working with the set tool until we've sort of defined a few key areas on the face. I'm using it kind of on the diamond here in the hopes of creating a nice spot for an eye. Been a long time since I made a dragon, so this is kind of going from memory. And if we need to make changes, we'll make changes later. Now hopefully you can kind of see the bridge of his nose and some eyes taking shape there. Try to work both sides evenly. I think I'm getting enough here that I can start setting the eye sockets in. To do that, we'll start with a center punch just to create a nice spot. A lot easier to get it centered and in position than trying to start with a round punch. And there just simply isn't room here for an eyeball punch until you make the eye sockets much bigger. On the other hand, this gives the impression of eyes already just doing that little bit. So if you wanted a very simple figurehead, You can already see where the eyes will go and where the bridge of the nose is. His snout overall may be a little too big, I think, but we'll see when we get closer to that part of it. The idea here is to start spreading material away from the forehead and give him nice wide eyes. I want to get far enough with the center punch that I can get a ball-end punch in there. I also see that I can refine the shape in front of the eyes a little bit. It's a good place for one of these oval handsets. That's why these come in handy. If you didn't already have this tool, you probably wouldn't take the time to make it just for this one little operation, but it does help. So let's take a look at a ball nose punch, and that'll go right back in where the center punch was being used, but should help to further spread those eyes out. I'm kind of angling in towards the head because I don't want to thin it too much on the very edge of his eyes. As I work, I can start lowering the punch and try to bring material up this way. Now what I can tell already is that for this particular dragon anyways, the eyeball punches that I made are simply not going to be the right size. I made these way too big. I was hoping for great big eyes, and on the other dragon we might get that, but there's no way these are going to work in this particular test piece. So let me get the eyeball punch from a previous set of tools. That's why you have to have assortment sometimes. Well, even that one might be a little bit on the large size. Let's try it and see what happens. We're just going to be very tentative to start with. And see if we think this is going to work. I think we're going to get away with it. This will continue to move material away from the punch as we go. This is just a matter of continued refinement until it looks like what you want it to look like. Still little flat spots right on the eyeballs, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get rid of right now. Hopefully this will be the last go around for the eyes. And we'll move on to something else. But for a finished product, taking the time to get the eyes right is well worth it. Now, final touch for the eyes would be to add some pupils. You can make your dragon looking straight ahead or cross-eyed or whatever you want them to be. So that pretty well defines the eyes. I think we're going to go ahead and do the nose next. And I'm going to see if I can do a little bit of work on that before we actually put the nostrils in, because something about this nose is just a little too chunky. So I'm going to see if I can draw that out a little bit. I've got this little spacer in the vise that hopefully will keep me from messing up the rest of his face while I work on this. And I think we'll go to the anvil to change that a little bit. That's pretty weird looking. Since this is more of a chance to look at the tooling, I'm not super worried about the final appearance, but I'd like it to at least look like a dragon. Again, I do not want to mess up the eyes. They are done. So this is part of why you do test pieces. You learn some things for the next part of the process. And I think we're just pretty much going to go with what we've got here. Result of some of that, we kind of created a little beard on the dragon, so I have to make sure that beard now hooks over the end. I'm sorry you can't see exactly what I'm doing here. It's kind of a bad camera angle, I'm afraid, but I'm using the center punch again, and I'm just setting in some nostrils. Now I want his nostrils to be a little bit deeper than that. So I'm going to take a very small ball-end punch. This is about an 1/8 inch punch on the end, and it tapers. So as I drive this in deeper, it'll start to fill up that center punch mark a little bit. Now make sure you don't drive this all the way through his nostril, or through this part of his snout. So I'm angling down a little bit. I don't see any sign of a punch coming through, but that makes it for some very nice deep nostrils, so it looks like he can actually breathe. Now I've got a fairly thin bladed chisel. This is one of the new tools, and I'm going to start setting in where I want his mouth to be. This is just a line I will be able to follow later, I hope. And again, just doing that much makes a big difference in the way he looks. Because now he looks like he's got a nose and a mouth. But we're going to try and split that mouth back about half or more the length of the face. Then we'll be able to open his mouth up and make him look like he's actually a dragon. I hope this view is a little bit better. You can see what I'm doing here. Pay attention to make sure this is going straight. The last thing you want to do is lop his nose off or his bottom lip or whatever. I keep saying his. You can have a girl dragon if you want. Awfully tempting to just do this with a bandsaw. I'm going to end up driving it all the way out of the vise here in a second. This may work a little bit better. Need to angle back up towards the top of his head here because I am a little bit thin. Now I'm not going to try and do any kind of a tongue on this particular dragon. On the one for the project, I think I will. Okay, there's a nice mouth. It's a good place for a big rawhide mallet. It doesn't tend to hurt the forging at all because it's soft. It smells like burning flesh. Let's take a look at doing some teeth in here. For putting teeth in, this curved chisel works pretty well. It's also very easy to lose a tooth if you're not careful. I'm just getting under there and raising a little burr with the chisel that gives the illusion of a tooth. You could put lots of teeth in, but it starts to be problematic, and the more you do, the more likely you are to split one off. Let's see if we can get some matching teeth on the other side. This chisel is also very good for making horns, but I did not leave enough material at the top of his head to make horns. So we're just going to settle for teeth. And those could use a little bit of refinement, I think. This is a place I think this little oval handset might work. Kind of get in there and make them stand more or less upright. Again, I know you can't really see exactly what I'm doing. I gotta figure out what angle I'm working at every heat. I can't always set the camera up for the best angle. I think that's all I'm going to do there. I'm going to show you how some of the other tools might be used to help give some definition and detail to his forehead. Now, of course, I forgot to turn the camera on, so I'll kind of show you what I was doing again here. I'm using fullers to help create some texture lines. Back behind his forehead. This will push the top of his eyes down a little bit and hopefully make him look a little more sinister. I also have a fuller that is kind of swedge shaped, so for this round area that works very well. In any place you feel like you need some sort of texture, fullers or small chisels can be quite handy. And I think we're about done with the dragon. I'm going to put some of the scale pattern in just to see what that looks like back here. Now this will be one of those things that on a more rounded surface it would look better. So of course the question then is, do you want to round this up for a door knocker or a fireplace poker or whatever you're making? And that's just up to you. If this is your dragon, you make it the way you want to. And of course you can try to work around the edge here. I'm not sure for a test piece if I need to do that or not. Yep. And try not to get double strikes. It looks kind of funny. Certainly it's easier before he cools off a little bit, but that does add to the look a little bit to have some scales. So we've seen most of the tools. Now I've managed to close his mouth doing that, so I'm going to open his mouth back up again. He probably won't like this, but I'm just going to yank on his beard a little bit. And that opens his mouth up just fine. And the last thing I want to do is bend him around so he'll kind of look at you. Now hook that right behind his snout so I don't mess up eyes or snout. And I'm going to give that a really nice bend. Then I'm going to back bend it a little bit, which I don't think I've got the heat for, so I'll heat that up one more time. I think I like that bend pretty nicely. I'm going to put it back in the vise though. His head's just a little bit cocked. Unfortunately, I think the only way to straighten that is going to be with a wrench. This is where the adjustable wrench comes in handy. That looks better. So now's a chance to give him a little wire brushing. So there is a relatively complete dragon. That's a little bit better. He would have looked a lot better with horns, but I didn't leave enough material to really do justice of a set of horns, I don't think. So we're just going to leave them off of this test piece. And of course, maybe not all dragons have horns. The last thing I'm going to do, now that he's kind of cooling off, I'm going to give him a little gold wire brushing. Make him a golden dragon. That brings out some highlights. Well, that was a fun little project. It gives us a chance to look at the majority of the styles of tools I made in this set. They aren't all included. We may not use all of them in a dragon at all, and as we use them for other projects, we'll take a look at any of the tools that I may have forgotten. But I tried to include some version of all the tools. There's 3 or 4 sizes of fullers, and we only looked at using one size of fuller. They're just the same tool in a different size, and the same thing with ball punches and eyeball punches and this various set tools. It's just which size and which shape do you need for that particular application. So it's just having a variety and having options is the only reason I made so many. In the end, the dragon probably only needs a few tools. You're going to need a set, you're going to need a center punch, an eyeball punch, some sort of a round punch to define eye sockets, but that's probably all you really have to have. You start adding other chisels and things like that, it just gives you more options on what you can do. So this is not the dragon I envision for the door knocker. It has some similarities, but there's some things that I would change. One, I think it really does need horns, and that means I needed to leave more material on the forehead that I would then come in with the curved chisel and split from back here and split this sharp outside corner off, lift it up like we did the teeth, only much bigger, and that's what becomes horns. And we may do that for the final project, but there's also another approach that I could take to doing horns, and we may look at that for the final project. And so that you have a reason you have to come back, we'll wait and explain what that other approach is when we get to it. You know, gotta love the cliffhangers. Anyways, I hope you found that enjoyable. If you've been thinking about making a dragon, this certainly gives you some ideas of where to start, and you may have seen something you'd like to do different on your dragon. It's one of the advantages of dragons. There are lots of different versions. Some version of a dragon exists all over the world. And everybody's version is a little different depending on local myth and legend and folklore and all that stuff. What the dragon looks like in your part of the world may be different than what a dragon looks like in my part of the world. But in the end, since nobody's ever actually seen a dragon, at least nobody I've ever met, you get to make the dragon look like the dragon you see up here, and nobody can tell you that's not what it looks like because it's your dragon. So that's an advantage over trying to do something like a bear or a ram's head, because people know what they look like. They can find pictures of actual bears and rams to tell you, oh, that didn't come out looking right. But a dragon, it's whatever you see up here, and your dragon is right no matter what it looks like. Certainly see making more dragons in the future. I see all sorts of applications for a piece like this, whether I draw this out into a fireplace poker, draw it out into something to make a hook, and make a nice big heavy hook. It would be suitable for a set of andirons, although it's a little bit small for andirons. Probably starting with 1-inch bar would be better. But lots of places you could go with this basic shape and a dragon's head. Lots of projects you could put it on. So we will probably do more dragon heads in the future. But we are going to do the door knocker, and may not be the next dragon head. I may do some more just to do another test piece. So I hope you don't get tired of watching me make dragons. If you enjoyed that video, give it a thumbs up. I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button if you haven't before. That way you know what's going on in the channel and you won't miss any future videos. There's also a little bell down there you can ring that will alert you when new videos come out. So if you really want to see what's going on, if you're anxious to see the next phase of the Dragon Door Knocker project, ring that bell down there and that'll set you up for some alerts. Otherwise, subscribe, and when you sign into YouTube, you'll be able to find it easier than having to go hunt for it. But you can always search under Black Bear Forge and the subject matter that you want to search for. So if you do Black Bear Forge, wrought iron door knocker, or wrought iron dragon, you'll probably find all the videos that are in this series. Anyways, I've talked long enough. Time for me to head in for lunch and then get back to work up here in the shop after lunch. Hopefully you have time to get out to your shop. You can make something. But do stay safe, do wear your safety glasses, and we'll see you for the next one.